Everywhere you turn these days, people are talking about crises. They're talking about the healthcare crisis. They're talking about the economic crisis. They're even talking about a crisis in leadership in our country and politics. But not many places am I hearing about a crisis that I feel has reached an epidemic proportion. And that's that our workforce is disengaged. In fact, Gallup did a recent study on this, and they found that 71% of America's workforce is disengaged. And we're not just talking about blue-collar folks here. We're talking about the knowledge worker. We're talking about the highest paid workers, those who are highly educated, who are between 30 and 64, and those who make up the most billable percentage of our business. So this is a major problem. 71% of people aren't excited to go to work on Monday. Isn't that a shame? I believe this is contributing to our economic crisis. I believe it's contributing to our healthcare crisis. Think about that. When you're disengaged at work, don't you feel a little depressed? Don't you want to sit on the couch and eat potato chips and watch TV? But you don't feel like that when you're engaged, when you feel like you're doing something meaningful and purposeful with your life. So I think it's time to usher in a new era of corporate social responsibility. One where we create meaningful workplaces for our employees. Now, how do you do that? How do you spark aliveness in the souls of your workers? I think it's by raising organizational awareness. I think it's by creating a vision that's powerful and engaging. And I think it's creating principles and behaviors where everybody knows what's expected of them. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, now, some of you may be asking, what do brand and culture have to do with each other? I want you to think about an iceberg. We all know that an iceberg has a little bit above the surface of the water, but most of its mass is underneath the surface. So think about what's above the surface. Think about that as your organization. That's what you know about your organization. It's what you see. And think about below the surface. What's below the surface of the iceberg? It's that collective unconscious. It's the culture. It's that modus operandi that is really, really hard to put your finger on. Now, why does that matter to public brand? If you think about what you know about your organization, that's what you say. That's what you can package up into packaged communication efforts. But think about what you don't know about your culture, that amorphous thing, that culture, your behaviors that are inherent to your group dynamic. That ends up being your behaviors. So you can package up all the things that you know about your organization and put a pretty website together. You can put a great PowerPoint together, a great pitch together. But what happens if you don't know how your culture really, really works? What's underneath the surface there? What's going to happen is that that behavior is going to seep out, and it's going to become part of the public brand through your employees' behavior. So that's why it's really important to understand and gain more organizational awareness into the ins and outs and the inner workings of that group dynamic that's at play in your organization. Now, some of you might say, group dynamic, culture, that's mumbo jumbo. I don't want to talk about that. That's fluffy stuff. Well, let's talk about this for a second. Just because you can't see culture doesn't mean that the forces aren't at play in your organization. I want you to all play along with me for a second. So everybody just pick up a pen. Everybody got a pen? Okay. Now on the count of 3, I want you to drop the pen. 1, 2, 3. All right. Anybody know what happened there? What was it that pulled the pen down?
Gravity.
That's right, it's gravity. Okay, so can you see gravity? You can't see gravity, no. And does gravity really impact your life most days? When you're walking down the street, do you think about gravity? Probably not. When you're brushing your teeth in the morning, do you think that it's gravity that's pulling the water down the sink? No, you don't. So let's talk about vision for a little bit. There are all sorts of ideas on what a vision should be. And in my opinion, most visions are lame. I hear all sorts of CEOs talk about, oh, I've got this great vision. We aim to be the preeminent supplier of XYZ to the defense industry. Oh my gosh, it's so boring. How is that going to inspire anybody in your organization? In my opinion, what vision should be is a very clear state of how the world looks different after you've done your work. Visions should be nirvana. They should be butterflies and puppy dogs. They should be rainbows and unicorns. They should be something that is so exciting and beautiful and fulfilling that all of your team wants to rally around it. Think about a great vision. John F. Kennedy, in his Man on the Moon speech. Now that was a great vision. You know, some people say that visions need to be strategic. I totally disagree. I think you put something big and bold out there, and that's when people rally behind you. And they say, I want to be a part of this thing. I want to make this happen. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I want to be a part of it. So what did JFK do? He said, we're going to put a man on the moon and bring him back in this decade. Because it's hard. It's hard work. And it's going to rally all of the best of what America has to offer into achieving something that's really exciting. And what happened? The whole country rallied around him. A lot of people actually give Kennedy the credit for modern engineering because he put all these scientists to work and engineers to work. And so when you're thinking about your own vision for your company, think about how the world really could be transformed, how the world could really be different as a result of your work and all of your employees' work. Now, a little tip on vision. I really believe that visions should tie up to a universal human ideal. What's a universal human ideal? If you study some religious texts, it's these ideals that us as human beings hold as universal truths. It's part of what it is to be human. So think back to President Kennedy's speech. What was the universal ideal that he was tying up to? It's the dignity of work.